Hello, my name is Kristen Blount, and I'll be giving a teaser of my senior thesis. So, the evolution of my thesis idea stemmed from Mrs. Ma's 11th grade American literature class, reading Zora Neale Hurston's Their Eyes Are Watching God. In this novel, we were introduced to Janie, who is in search of self-revelation until her grandmother Nanny shares her generational trauma of racism within community. Because of this, she seeks protection for Janie by forcing her to marry Logan Killicks. However, in sharing her traumatic experiences, Nanny really says something that resonated with me. It made me inquire about why this is her perspective of her identity, when she says, "The black woman is the mule of the world so far as I can see." At first, I understood Janie's frustration with Nanny, because they were living in different times, and Janie was optimistic about this evolution within her community. However, as I walked with Janie through her journey of self-revelation and creating her identity, I soon realized that although the community evolved, she was still perceived as the mule of the world, and she needed to find a way to virtuously live in that predicament. The question my thesis seeks to resolve is, in light of the multiple forces opposing the individuality of black women, how can one lead a virtuous life? What is a virtuous response to oppression that moves past mute acceptance? As we acknowledge the historical truth, but banish the mule of the world role for black women, what is the virtuous path forward? And in answering this question, as you all know, the curricular text I chose was Their Eyes Are Watching God, and in this story, Janie is the protagonist who is in search of love and self-revelation, and she had to realize that in order to recreate her identity, she must abandon the role community has given her, and she must stay true to her own in order to live virtuously. Another text that I used is Zora Neale Hurston's essay, How It Feels to Be Colored Me. And she writes about her exploration of discovering her identity and self-pride as she follows her dreams despite how impossible it may seem within a community that deems her a mule of the world. The next essay I used in my thesis was Sojourner Truth's speech, Ain't I a Woman?, which she delivers as a well-known anti-slavery speaker that chose to speak about the intersectionality between the women's suffrage and black rights movements. In this speech, she utilizes this time to expose the failing that both movements have neglected black women in their activist works. Finally, the last text I incorporated into my thesis is Alice Walker's In Search of Our Mother's Garden, which is a collection of essays that declare that in spite of opposing forces within community, black women have found different outlets for their creativity and voices in a virtuous life. I also included Toni Morrison's Sulla, which is another example about how black women come to this realization of abandoning their initial role in society, but I am still developing research from this novel. These sources depict that although black women share the role mule of the world, they must each abandon that role in order to discover their individuality and explore the self-revelation that gives them the ability to live virtuously within community in spite of those opposing forces. However, the way in which they decide to move past this role in community are different from each other, which brings the question of whether or not this can be done in isolation or within community. As one navigates through integrating into community, one's identity must lead this navigation to become essential members of society. However, when forming an identity within community, black women have the misfortune of a historical truth of being the mule of the world. In this misfortune, black women are stripped of their opportunity to initially create their identity. However, it is up to black women to refuse to rely on community to create her identity and to search for opportunities that allow her to deny and form her own identity. All in all, in this pursuit, however, black women must isolate themselves in order to understand the process of self-revelation. But she must realize that once she understands herself, she must re-enter to teach and save other black women from this dangerous role of being the mule of the world. Thank you.